Today we're going to save ourselves a few €1,000 on a truly state-of-the-art boat, the kind that already has all its systems fully integrated into a touchscreen display. Today we are going to automate our switch panel so that we can control our boat's functions from practically anywhere, using either our mobile phone or our tablet device. I'd already rehearsed that. Greetings sailors, and welcome to yet another fresh episode of the Low-Cost Sailor. When we see on TV the latest boat models that Rafa Nadal or Fernando Alonso have bought, with all their luxuries and all their technology available just a simple tap away on their iPad, and the newest shipyard models where touchscreens control all their amenities, it can make us feel just a little envious. Greetings, Rafa and Fernando. I'm sure you follow the channel. Or, well, perhaps you should, to learn a few little tricks for your boats. I'm sure they could use some things. So today, essentially, we're going to transform our old, slightly outdated boats into the ultimate in touchscreen control and remote operation of their features. And in a very straightforward way. At least much simpler than having to sell our boats and then spend a few million to buy a super yacht. How many subscribers are we still away from being able to do that, Carlos?
With 20 or 30 million, we've got it.
There we go. More or less, we're going to have to do it our own way and spend around €30 to automate our boat's switch panel, so we can control it right from our phone or tablet, whether from anywhere on the boat or even comfortably from home. And what real good will it actually do us to automate the switch panel on our boat? Well, mainly just to show off a little bit. Well, there are actually quite a lot of practical uses, because in many situations the switch panel on our boats isn't located in the most convenient place, especially on older boats, and relocating it can take a pretty significant effort. Rewiring, drilling new holes, figuring out exactly where to run the cables, and so on. Today's idea is that, while still keeping the existing switch panel on our boats, we're going to add a set of new features that will allow us to control all of its switches directly from our tablet or mobile phone. And what will this allow us to do? Well, it will be useful in many different ways, from being able to control from the cockpit or the helm station, really from absolutely anywhere. The navigation lights, the interior lights, the radio, or basically any switch at all that we have on our panel, to being able to carry out these very same operations from home or from the beach. For example, turning on the refrigerator a few hours ahead of time on the day we're going out on the boat, or turning it off if the marina's power fails, or for instance turning the anchor lights on and off from the beach, which I'm sure has happened to some of you at some point. I remember a fairly typical night like that at anchor. You head down in Formentera to the beach bar, and when it's time to head back after having a drink or two, you suddenly have no real idea which of those many lights shining out in the night is actually your boat. You take out your phone, make them blink, and then you immediately know exactly where you need to head to with the dinghy. We will even look at some very simple automation tasks, where the anchor light automatically turns on at dusk and then switches itself off at dawn, in case the spirits have led us to sleep in just a bit longer in the morning, so we do not have to wake up early just to turn it off. In the end, we will see many useful uses for our automated switch panel. Although we will devote an episode to the 12-volt electrical system on our boat, let us briefly review where our switch panel fits in and what it is used for. On any of our boats, we will find an electrical system that powers some basic services such as navigation lights, navigation electronics, the radio, refrigerators, and much more. These devices are normally powered by a common battery, usually called the house battery, since it supplies all the services. So in a basic electrical diagram for a boat, we will have a 12-volt house battery that will receive its charge from some charging source, such as the engine alternator, a shore charger, or solar panels, and so on. It will also have a battery disconnect switch to isolate it from the electrical system if necessary. And from it, a pair of cables, ranging from fairly thick to very thick, will run to a distribution block from which all the electrical devices on our boat will be powered. Typically, this is used to select which devices we want to turn on and which ones we do not want to turn on. And right next to that distribution block, there is a switch panel. These come in all sorts of shapes and colors, with push-button switches, differently colored LED lights, boat diagrams, and LEDs that light up to indicate what you have connected, and they are usually labeled with the name of what they turn on and off, whether in English, Spanish, or Chinese, if you happen to have a Chinese boat. On my boat, originally, we had, for example, the navigation lights, the anchor light, the depth sounder, the cabin lights, the pressurized water system, the bilge pump, the refrigerator, and the radio. But of course, as more technology has been added gradually over time, we've also had to add new switches, additional push buttons, controllers, and so on. And above all, a whole bunch of cables that, well, in my case, might need just a little bit of organizing, but I assure you I'm truly trying to do my homework, and I've already bought some very useful cable organizing strips from Brick-A-Mart. And who knows, maybe all of this will be neatly organized by the end of the episode.
Hold on. I just watched a video by Sailor George where he shows the switch panel from the back, and honestly, the wiring looks so perfectly neat. It's genuinely a pleasure to see. I would honestly be just a little bit embarrassed to actually show this.
Well, but we'll have it looking good at some point too. We'll end up getting it organized, and we might even take advantage and have the panel itself swapped out. Because on AliExpress, I've seen some really tempting ones in lots of colors. So with the new switches, we'll see how it goes.
With neon lights.
With neon lights in a well-organized tangle of cables like Sailor George's, what we will find is that all the negatives for everything are joined together at the junction box behind the panel, and that the panel carries a positive wire from that same junction box, which is the one that distributes power to each of the switches, and each switch will feed its corresponding device accordingly. Each one of those switches usually has a fuse associated with it, or else the switches themselves are protected because they are circuit breakers or that kind of device. In other words, they will all trip if there is an overcurrent. What we are going to do is wire, in parallel with each of those switches, a Wi-Fi connected relay that will allow us to turn them on and off whenever the physical switch itself is not in the closed position. That is to say, if we use the switch, we will be able to turn it on with it. But if we do not use the physical switch, we will be able to turn it on and off from the tablet or the mobile phone via Wi-Fi.
So does the switch still work the same way?
Just like always, yes, but if you leave it on with the switch, there's no way to turn it off. However, if you leave it off, I usually don't use the switches anymore, and I always use the virtual ones, and with that I turn them on, turn them off, and so on. But you're in the middle of the sea and you quickly say, I need to understand how this works. Where's the phone? Well, you just press the button and that's it. Let's go shopping. And to do all of this, what are we going to need? Most importantly, our Wi-Fi relay module. We're going to choose one that can be used directly with the eDai app, which is the one I use for other controllers on the boat, like the water heater controller, but there are identical versions that are compatible with other apps like Tuya Smart, and they will work and be set up in exactly the same way. So I will leave links for all of them and you can choose whichever you prefer. They are available in versions with 1 relay and with 4 relays. In our case, we are going to control 8 devices, so we are going to get a couple of them, although we will only install 1 unit as an example today. However, you will need as many relays as the switches that you want to automate. Also, these relay modules are available with Wi-Fi only control, or they can also come with a radio frequency remote so you can control them from inside the boat without having to use your phone or anything. Whichever you prefer, I have chosen one that includes both options for the example, so you can see how both options work. I should also mention that you can get it in an enclosed version like the one I am going to use in this video, where it is much easier to see how everything works, or without an enclosure, which is probably the most useful version for installing it in a permanent setup. In addition to this, you will need electrical wire, usually the same gauge as what is already being used in your panel, and to make neat connections, some electrical terminals, ideally the kind that are both male and female at the same time. You could probably call them hermaphroditic terminals, and they will let you jumper the switches very easily. If you would like to control something with fairly high power, the relays that come with it are rated at 10 amps, so in principle they should handle anything. However, for example, for a refrigerator, and I'm saying this from experience, it may work well for you to control the refrigerator with a larger relay that is driven by the panel relay, because I already burned out one of the board's relays due to my refrigerator's startup current spikes. Of course, if you still don't have a switch panel, or if you would like to replace it, there are also tons of different models on AliExpress, available in all sorts of colors. For our example, we're going to use a small mini one that I have in the main van to charge phones and to power the little bedside table light. But the selection on AliExpress is truly huge. And if you would like, as I usually do for safety, you can add an additional switch to completely disconnect the relay circuit, and then the panel would work as it always has, only manually. Of course, you can find all of the links in the video description and also in our post on our website. As you already know, if you use our links, you are supporting the channel at absolutely no additional cost to you at all. The setup is going to be quite simple. Basically, what we've purchased is our relay board, which comes with the instructions, and this is the one. If you buy it with a case, then it will come with the case already included, but the connections are exactly the same. And since we chose the model that can also be controlled using a remote, we got it with a remote control that has 4 buttons, which we can assign to each of the relay's 4 connections, What we want to do is simulate, or at least see more clearly, how it would actually be connected to the switch panel on our boat. And for that purpose, we brought a switch panel, the simplest one that I found on AliExpress, which is usually the single switch type, the same kind I have in the cabin. I removed this one from the cabin, but we're going to do the test using this one, and then we'll see it working. And now, since we are not going to move a battery here either, to power it up, we are going to use our most commonly used resource in almost all of our videos, the power bank. Here on this power bank, we're going to have our full 12 volts available for use. Let's go over what the typical normal setup for a switch panel would look like. First, we would have our battery, and on that battery we'd have our 12-volt outlet, where there is usually a main switch that allows us to disconnect power and also the negative terminal. And our panel is going to have a couple of different wires. The negative wire, which will connect up to the negative terminal, and the positive wire, which would normally connect directly to the main switch. We'll just stick it on here kind of poorly, and that will basically be it. So then we have the 12-volt battery, the really thick cables, or well, the battery disconnect, the really thick cables, which in our case actually aren't all that thick, that run up to our switch panel and come in here into the switch panel. Normally, there would be a junction box right here, and then it would run from there to the switch panel. Right now, we're also going to add something that can turn this on, for example, this small little light. And so, the normal operation of this panel would be if the main switch is properly connected up. This is how the main switch would normally be connected. So now our panel is fully powered. Here it has a fuse, and if we turn on the switch, our light will turn on. Now, this would be the normal behavior of any switch on our switch panel. And now what we're going to do is place our circuit in parallel with this switch so that everything will work properly and as expected. The first step is to power up our circuit. We're going to need some wires, basically a couple of wire spools that we have here. And now we'll also take a closer look at the connectors that we're going to use. So the very first thing we'll do is power up our relay board. To power our relay board, the input is located right here, and we'll be supplying it with between 7 and 32 volts through this connection. Also, the polarity doesn't matter, so you can connect the positive and negative leads in whichever way you prefer. So we're going to begin by connecting the wires. For example, we'll have the negative lead right here and then the positive lead right here, okay? These wires will go directly to our battery's power supply. We're also going to remove the main switch for just a moment and connect these two together right here. We've connected the cables properly, and now we have what would be our relay module located right here. It's already powered up. We can even test it out if we go ahead and set this one.
That black cable, shouldn't it go somewhere?
Ah, that's a great observation. Then we will cut it.
No, come on, if there's just one thing I actually get to do, it's this, since I said it correctly.
Alright then, okay, we'll give it to you, Well then, come on, the two black cables there. The two red cables go to the output. If we connect the switch, we can already see that this one turns on and that this one works normally. Now what is our next objective? Our next goal is this. We need to bridge this one. And to do that, we're going to prepare two of those cables I was telling you about, the hermaphroditic ones, which we're going to go ahead and use. For now, we're going to turn it off. These are the ones I mentioned as hermaphroditic connectors, okay? And with these, we're going to make some cables to bridge this input right here. We are going to make a couple of small cables. I am going to make these a bit longer to see if I can make use of them for something, because we need to save money here. I cannot go around wasting cables just to give you demonstrations. We're going to strip both ends here, this end right here, and then we'll strip the other end right over here as well. Now we will take them and insert them carefully into their connectors. We have one right here, and then we also have the other one as well. Alright, now if you take a look here at each of the relays, what we have is a set of contacts, and those contacts correspond to what it says on the back, the common. In the center, we are going to need to connect the power input, and then on the normally open terminal, we are going to connect the other wire as well. That means that as long as the relay does not activate, there will not be any connection at all between these two wires. And when the relay activates, the switch will close and it will operate just like the exact same switch we are going to replace. So, it's this one and this one. Then we just take them and plug them in right here. The input is going to go right here, and the output is going to go right over here. Please remember that it's the no contact, the normally open contact. That means that as long as we don't supply any electricity at all, those two wires are not connected to each other. We already have the wires prepared and ready to go. The two wires that are going to bridge across the switch, and here we have the switch itself that we want to bridge. It really doesn't matter, but well, if we do it properly, we're going to take the common wire, which is the one in the center of the relay, and we're going to put it here at the input. So we connect the common wire right here together with this other one, and that's basically it, just like this. And here we can now connect our common wire, and we bridge the other one in exactly the same way as well. We're going to do it like this, and we already have it right here on this other side. Alright, there they are. If you take a look, I'm going to bring it a little bit closer. If you look right there, you can see they are bridged together at the output. So now we can go back to doing our tests. First of all, we connect the switch. Our circuit is powered, but it is not operating, and this one should work normally. Very well, if I press it, it works. If I do not press it, it does not work. The first way to use these relays is simply that if you press the button, it activates. Of course, you have to select the proper mode because it has both a latching mode and an on-off mode. We have it set to the on and off mode, so if we press it once, it turns on, and if we press it again, it turns off. It's really very simple. This works with any of them just to turn it on and off. As you can see, if it's already turned on, then no matter what we do here, we won't be able to turn it off. But if it's turned off, then remotely we will be able to turn it on and off. The next step, using the remote, this one here, or really just about any remote, is very easy because it can learn the signal from basically any remote at all. What we do is press and hold one of the buttons for about 3 seconds, the blue light comes on, and then we press and hold for around 2 seconds the button that we want to program. It's all set. It's already programmed. Now, for example, if I want to turn it on, I can do it with that button or here with the remote. I press the remote and it turns on. I press it again and it turns off.
And will any remote work for you?
Any remote like these of this type, there are 2 frequencies. This one is 433. So the ones on the 433 frequency, these remotes for controlling things remotely, any of them will work and you can learn it. You can use one remote for one thing.
And another for something else, each one for a single thing, but that is fabulous.
In fact, for example, the remote control, this very well-known remote control that we use for our electric winch, is basically the same one and it would also work perfectly. It's the exact same system. So now we can turn it on with this one or turn it off with this one. But honestly, I can't really picture Rafa Nadal pressing this button or using one of these remotes since this one is very practical. We've come here to connect this device so that we can control it from a phone, a tablet, or from practically anywhere. And that's exactly what we're going to take a look at next. Alright, we're going to set it up so it works over Wi-Fi using our phone. The very first thing we're going to do is download the eWeLink app either from the Play Store or from the Apple Store. Since I already have it installed, we tap open and I have it right here. It shows me the devices I already have and the ones that are currently connected. So what we're going to do is simply add a completely brand new device. We'll start by turning on our device right here. We connect the power, select quick pairing, and then add a new device. It will ask us for the name of our Wi-Fi network and for the Wi-Fi password, which we will need to type in right here. We then tap next, and now what we do is press and hold any of these buttons for about 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now we simply wait for it to locate the device, and that's all. We can go ahead and assign it a name. In this case, for example, we'll call it a panel 1, and here we have our switch panel, and now in theory, if we select it and say on turn on, and then say on turn off, the exact same thing happens with any of the other ones as well. And now it's working properly.
And that's it.
And that's it. Now all that's left is to go ahead and install it in its proper place. Honestly, this really reminds me of something. First, I just want to say that I truly adore my wife, that she is genuinely the best thing that has ever happened to me, and that she's an absolute sweetheart. And in the summer, I especially enjoy our days together on the boat, anchored, eating, going down to the beach, swimming, reading, or simply just resting while being gently rocked by the waves. You also know that, especially in winter, I very often sail alone because Lara doesn't enjoy it quite as much as I do, and in winter she tends to see the boat as a place where you mostly just end up feeling cold. Well, in any case, it has never really bothered me at all. I genuinely enjoy sailing alone, being out there in winter with the Bay of Santander almost entirely to myself, with the breeze carrying you so quietly over perfectly flat water while you are completely lost in your own innocent thoughts. But even though sailing days are truly beautiful, they can sometimes get quite tough when you are completely all alone. And loneliness brings with it a certain need. It's just that there were many days, so much loneliness, and well, then she showed up.
Wait. You're not actually going to tell that, are you really?
Well, I was going to tell it.
I really don't think it's a very good idea for you to tell that. A lot of people see this, David, and this. Let's see, Lara watches the channel too.
They glance at it briefly and pass it along quickly for sure.
Don't worry, it's entirely up to you. You'll see what you end up doing.
Well, as I was telling you, the hardest part of it all is that the very first time I ever saw her was because my wife brought her home. Why would I deny it? She caught my attention with her sensual voice, her culture, and her brilliance. But over time, I also started talking with her. And honestly, the conversations were interesting. We got along well, and I decided to take her out to the boat one day. Yes. The first time I took her, my wife didn't come anymore. And honestly, she adapted to the boat very quickly. And not only did she still make for very interesting conversation, but she knew quite a lot, especially a whole lot about boating. That fills you up pretty quickly. But the fundamental difference was just how helpful she was compared to my wife. When you asked my wife to do anything on the boat, she would immediately start coming up with excuses and doubts. Alexa, as she's called, was extremely helpful. Lara, could you turn on the navigation lights for me?
Do I have to go inside to do it?
Yes, of course.
No.
Well, it's simply going down, so it's really not that big of a deal.
What if I feel dizzy?
We're in the harbor. You're not going to get dizzy.
Okay, well, come on. I'll use the fact I have to go down to the bathroom because I really can't hold it. And I'll check it for you. And which button was it?
The one labeled navigation lights. It only shows a red light when you switch it on.
Okay, are you turning it on now?
That one right over there? No, please switch it off for me.
Okay.
Alexa, please turn on the navigation lights.
Okay.
Excuse me, Lara, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? What kind of weather will it be tomorrow?
Tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow, here.
Well, I'm not sure. I haven't checked. But here, whatever you see.
Alexa, what's the weather tomorrow in Santander?
Tomorrow in Santander, Cantabria, the sky will be partly sunny, with highs of 15 degrees Celsius and lows of 9 degrees.
How many kilometers per hour is 4 knots?
What?
4 knots in kilometers per hour, please?
Those are quite the questions you're asking me. You know I'm great with the humanities, but I'm not very good with science and numbers.
Alexa, could you tell me how many kilometers per hour 4 knots is?
4 knots are approximately 7.4 kilometers per hour.
Lara, could you please sing a song for me?
A song?
Yes, a song.
What kind of song do you want me to sing?
Well, I don't know. Any song, just to entertain us a bit.
Well, I don't have any in mind right now, but I'm sure one will get stuck in my head later in the car with the radio on.
Alexa, please sing something for me.
Now that we're going slowly, we're going to tell lies. Tralara.
Well, it's really wonderful, and on top of that, it barely bothers anyone at all, because lately with my wife, it's been very hard to get around the boat. I don't know if she's swelling up dents or what, but she's getting a belly that I honestly just don't know. One of these days, I'm going to tell her something. Really tell her. Well, as you can see, thanks to the Amazon Alexa app, and if you happen to have, like I did, an Amazon Echo lying around somewhere, one of those you got as a gift last Christmas that's a big hit at first, but then ends up kind of forgotten, well, here on the boat, you'll be able to give it a whole new life. It also runs directly on 12 volts, so it's ideal for the boat. You also have a purchase link in the description, but really, when I say Alexa, I mean Siri or Google Assistant as well, directly on your phone or tablet. They're all essentially set up in pretty much the same way, and you'll be able to do exactly the same things. And basically, they can all integrate with devices from the main apps for this kind of thing, such as Tuya Smart eWeLink or various Sonoff devices. All of this works with the inexpensive ones as well as the expensive ones. The setup is quite simple and opens up many possibilities for us. Today we'll look at it with Alexa, but we'll devote an episode to navigating with the tablet, where we'll do these things with Google Assistant as well. For example, just install the Amazon Alexa app, power our Echo Dot using a Mechio adapter so we can comfortably use it on the boat, and then follow the setup steps. Once Alexa is set up, integrating it with our switch panel is also going to be very straightforward. In the Alexa app, we will select Add a new device, choose Switch, select the brand for our app, which is eWeLink, and it will then offer us the connector for that app. After going through a few required approval steps so that Alexa can connect properly to the devices, we will then have them available right within our Alexa app, and we can control them directly from there. We will also assign it a more appropriate name, which will set the default names for each of the relays so that they clearly represent exactly what we want to turn on, because later that is the name we will use to tell Alexa to turn each one on or off. Besides what we can do with the Alexa app, each individual app itself, such as uLink or Tuya Smart, also has the option to create scenes that link turning things on. For example, the anchor light with sunset or sunrise, or a scene that, when we close up the boat, turns off everything unnecessary and leaves the boat in surveillance mode, or for instance in a low power mode, so that by pressing a single button on the screen, it turns off the lights, the fridge, and everything that is superfluous. We can trigger all of these scenes on the screen with a single button or by voice, by telling Alexa, Siri, or Google Assistant, or even, for example, by proximity, so that when we move away from the boat, it switches to surveillance mode, or when we arrive at the boat, the instruments turn on, etc. All of this, combined with the many sensors we already have deployed, our Raspberry, and a few other things we'll be looking at more closely in future episodes, will allow us to build a boat that will truly be the envy of Rafa Nadal. Rafa, call me. Well, call me if you think you need to upgrade it and add these things.
Please tell him to leave us a comment down below.
Rafa, okay? Or please leave me a message in the comments. It would mean a lot to us.
Do Rafa's comments lift you up more?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Honestly, being able to remotely control our boat's instrument panel is going to be extremely useful when we're sailing. Whether we're sailing while on board, for example, not only with voice control, but in the way I use most often, which is directly from the tablet itself, being able to control the panel without having to go down inside the boat and, for instance, switch on the navigation lights and keep sailing along, or switch off the fridge if we're sailing and the battery level starts to drop, or that sort of thing, is going to be really useful for us. And on top of that, when we're not on the boat and we're at home, we'll still be able to manage situations where we can really keep control over it. For example, if the marina's breakers trip, as has happened to me, or if someone disconnects your shore power cable while you still had the fridge running, you can switch the fridge off directly from home so it doesn't keep drawing electricity. Or if you don't normally keep it on, a few hours before you decide to head to the marina, you can switch it on from home so you'll have cold drinks waiting in the fridge when you arrive. Those kinds of things can be really useful. In any case, this has been a small step, a fairly simple one, along the path toward automating and unifying absolutely everything we have on our boat. At some point in the upcoming episodes, we'll see how we already have a whole bunch of sensors that are sending us information, and now we also have the ability to act on that information, so we can create overview dashboards where we'll see our boat, the different data it's sending us, and at the same time we'll have our small virtual buttons that we can use to interact with it. And it's going to turn out like a millionaire's boat, and it's going to be a boat, well, the envy of everyone. Thank you very much for your attention, sailors. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel. You can click the bell to receive notifications of the new videos we publish, and you can use the comments section to ask us anything you'd like, although I recommend checking the video description and our website www.thelowcostsailor.com, where you'll find all the purchase links and all the links to everything we mentioned. See you in 2 weeks in a new episode of The Low Cost Sailor.
By the way, I already know which song I can sing for you.
A song about what?
The song you asked me for the other day.
The song that I asked you for the other day. Oh, okay. Well then, please go ahead and sing.
It's one that just came to mind.
Okay, come on, sing.
We're going to tell some lies, tra-ra-ra. We're going to tell some lies, tra-ra-ra. We're going to tell some lies.